Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy. Welcome back to another video. So today we're going to be ranking all of the Pixar sequels. I'm currently in a little bit of a process where I'm trying to rank the entire Pixar filmology now that Inside Out 2 is out. And I will admit it's taking me a little bit of time because, in my opinion, Pixar has never really made any bad movies. I think that some of the ones on the bottom of my list, whenever that comes out, are movies that are like okay, but at the end of the day, every single Pixar movie is good in its own way. And one thing that I really like about the Pixar studio is if you ask a group full of 20 different people what their favorite Pixar movie, you're gonna get a lot of different answers, and I love that. I think that that's awesome. But one thing I will say about Pixar, I feel like their sequels have always had kind of a bad track record, so I'm gonna be ranking all of their sequels together, and I want to go ahead and say this before I get too far into this. I am only including sequels. I'm not including spin-offs, so Lightyear is not going to be in this, and I am going to be including Monsters University in this because, in my opinion, I love the headcanon like fan theory that people had where the movie was actually going to end with them taking Boo to college and them just kind of like giving her the story of their college experience or whatever. So even though it's a prequel, it's on this list, and I do want to go ahead and say I am ranking them based off of their sequel ability. So in my opinion, how good of a sequel it is, not how good the movie as a whole is, how good is it as a sequel. That being said, at the end of this video, I'm going to rapid fire just rank them in my opinion, which one's the best movie, which one's the worst. But that being said, we're going to go ahead and dive into this. Alrighty, so coming in dead last place, and I might get a lot of hate for this, but Toy Story 4. In my opinion, Toy Story 4 should have never been made. And if they were going to be continuing on with this franchise, I really wish that instead of it being a story about Woody or a story about just the toys in general, I really would have liked to see them switch the perspective a little bit. Maybe make this a story about Bonnie, kind of make it a coming-of-age story, maybe make her character actually stand out a little bit. And I was kind of hoping that it was going to be something where it's like the original 3 movies were Andy's trilogy, and then this would be the beginning of Bonnie's trilogy. And instead, they basically made this movie 100% about Woody. He goes on his little journey and adventure by himself, and we still, by the end of this movie, know nothing about Bonnie. And that, to me, drove me insane. And then I think another thing is, like, all of the, like, main toys that we've been spending the majority of this franchise with get sidelined in this movie. And that makes me really sad because, like, we've had 3 movies where Woody has been the main character, and this is just another movie where he is the main character. That being said, I like some of the stuff that they did with it. I think Duke Kaboom is a very fun character, and a lot of the other characters who they introduced in here was great. The return of Bo Peep was fantastic, but I just could not quite get on board with this movie. Coming in 8th place, even though I absolutely love this movie, I do have to be honest with myself, it's not a great sequel. Cars 2. I love this movie. I think it's fantastic. I think that it does a really good job of introducing a lot of younger audiences to the world of spies and espionage, but let's be honest, the first Cars movie is practically a Hallmark movie. It's a cute little love story where a guy falls in, who is big and famous and very successful, goes into a town that is very small, falls in love, and then decides to set down his roots there, right? And that's great. That's fantastic. Very simple love story. A couple of fun racing sequences. Now, flash forward to the second movie, he is going around the globe doing a bunch of races and stuff like that, which I think is a good progression for him. But instead of Lightning McQueen being the main character of the second movie, they decided to make it Tow Mater. Interesting decision. I do think that Larry the Cable Guy is great, and I think that he's very funny, and I think that everything that they did with Tow Mater and his like tall tales and stuff like that are fantastic, right? I love the character of Mater, and I think he's very interesting, but just the overall decision to make him the main character, and the fact that they basically sidelined the entire World Grand Prix, very disappointed me. As somebody who grew up and was a huge fan of racing and NASCAR and stuff like that, I was very disappointed that they didn't really give us a whole lot of racing, and they instead went with the spy side of things. Even though it is a really cool movie, and I have a lot of respect for what they decided to do with it, I think that at the end of the day, it's not a great sequel. Coming in 7th place, this is another one that I think some people might very strongly disagree with, but I have Incredibles 2. In my opinion, we waited about 10 years, 12 years, or even more for this movie, and it was incredibly underwhelming. I think that overall the villain is not that interesting. It's very predictable little plot twist with who the villain is, and overall, I just think that this movie played everything a little too safe. I think that the original movie is bold. It does some incredible things. I think Syndrome is one of the greatest animated villains of all time, and I think that it's a very political film talking about how should superheroes exist, if superheroes are going to exist, how should they be implemented in the real world, and the whole like thing about them like getting rid of superheroes, and all the superheroes are no longer allowed to be themselves out in public. They're not allowed to have, you know, those public personas and go around saving the day. They have to be regular human beings, just like everybody else, and the fact that Syndrome in the original movie literally had a giant genocide and killed an ungodly amount of superheroes. And this movie just decides, okay, we're going to bring in a new group of superheroes, and there's a bunch of new superheroes, and they're around, and they're just, starting to, experiment with their powers and stuff like that. And they're really excited because the superheroes are going to be back in the world again. And the fact that it kind of like completely avoids how much danger they could potentially be in, the fact that they kind of avoid all the political drama with like what's going to happen with superheroes when they do become famous again, it just kind of bothers me how it doesn't, in my opinion, live up to the first movie with the fact that there's like a big political dilemma. I think that the main message that this movie was trying to showcase was, screens are bad, maybe don't pay attention to the media so much, never just focus on screens for too long. And it's a good message, and especially a good message to give to kids, but I think that in comparison to the first one, this movie was very, very lackluster. Coming in 6th place, this movie was actually my comfort movie for a couple of years, so it kind of pained me to put it here, but Finding Dory, it's a very entertaining movie, and I think that the comedy and everything for this movie works incredibly well. All of the new characters that were introduced to is cool. I think that the entire, weird little, SeaWorld type place that they take him to is fancy and interesting, but overall, I don't really enjoy this movie. I think that, aside from it being a very funny movie and a very entertaining movie, it doesn't have a lot of those heart-to-heart moments that you would expect from a Pixar movie. I think that everything with Dory's backstory is fascinating, but I don't think that it's anything that we necessarily needed to see. And then the whole journey with Nemo and Marlin having to go save Dory, although it is interesting and it's fun, like father-son bonding, I just feel like this is not where I would have wanted a sequel to this franchise to go. So overall, it's a decent movie, and a lot of people enjoy it, but I just think that as a sequel, it's not what I think that a sequel to Finding Nemo needed to be or should have been. Coming in 5th place, I absolutely love this movie. I think that it is an incredible end to a really weird trilogy, but we got Cars 3. Personally, I really love this movie. The Cars movie was kind of my childhood. I was a really big fan of Lightning McQueen. I was a really big fan of Cars 2 growing up, and when Cars 3 officially came out and they revealed the first ever trailer for it, the first little teaser trailer, and it ended with Lightning McQueen having a horrific accident and him crashing, and it kind of looked like he just died. Yeah, I was like, okay, I'm locked into this. This is going to be great, and overall, I do think that it is a pretty solid movie. I think well-rounded. It is pretty great. The storytelling is fantastic. I think that the plot elements are great. The animation style, say what you want about Pixar, their animation in Cars 3 is incredible. There are some sequences where they're on the racetrack where it's like, if you told me that this was an actual film, like that they filmed with like actual real stunt cars and stunt drivers and stuff like that, there are parts of it where I would 100% believe it. It is incredibly well animated. But overall, there are a lot of notes and beats and stuff that I think that this movie misses. For one, Lightning McQueen isn't really with a lot of his friends and companions throughout the majority of this movie. He goes on a little adventure with Cruz Ramirez, is that her name? Something like that. And they just kind of go on a little adventure road trip together, and it's a fun little action and adventure movie. But I am really bothered by the fact that Lightning McQueen doesn't spend a whole lot of time with Sally in this movie. Tow Mater, I believe, once again, is kind of sidelined in this movie. And it's just really interesting to me how it's like they go from Cars, he's introduced to a whole new group of people. We love all these people. They're all great. They're fantastic. To the second one, he goes on a little road trip with a couple of them. And then the last one, it's just him and a new character, which it's like, it works, but it's like, as far as like trilogies go, I feel like him not being surrounded by his friends and family or whatever and his supporters is a little weird. Coming in 4th place, we have the new one, Inside Out 2. I absolutely love this movie. I think that is an incredible sequel. I think it's an incredible movie. And personally, I think that it's a little bit better than the first Inside Out movie. But that being said, because it is so similar with the main themes and elements of the movie to the first one, I couldn't really justify putting this any higher. On its own, it is an incredible film. I gave it a rating of an 89 out of 100. I think it is very, very solid. The humor in it is excellent. All of the characters work incredibly well. I'm not going to dive into any spoilers here, but for the main themes and stuff of this movie, it is essentially just retreading on what the first movie was. The first movie is about, multiple emotions kind of clashing with each other and then realizing that they all need to work together to make Riley her whole self. And this movie does essentially that same thing. They introduce a whole new team of emotions and then have them all realize, okay, we all need to work together in unison to create the perfect, ideal emotions and what was the phrase they used in the movie? In the movie, I think they called it her, man, I'm blanking so hard right now. It's her, belief system, her entire belief system, and they kind of like have to forge how she interacts as a person and how she does all of the specific things that she does as a human being. And I think that it's a great coming of age movie, and I really liked the movie, like I said, but because it is as similar as it is to the first one, I couldn't put it higher than this. Okay, now starting off our top three, we got Toy Story 2. I think that this movie is absolutely incredible. I'm not a fan of the Toy Story movies. I've said this multiple times in the past. I feel like growing up, you're either like a Toy Story fan or a Cars fan, because all of the rankings that I've seen for Pixar, usually if the Toy Story movies are a little bit lower, it's because the person was a Cars fan, and like vice versa. But that being said, Toy Story 2, an incredibly emotional movie. I think that everything that they do with Jesse's character is fantastic. The fact that they kind of start to touch on certain toys being abandoned and what happens to toys when they get abandoned is very interesting. I like the entire side of the movie that's dealing with like toy collectors out there who are like, oh my god, toys are more than just little things that little kids should be playing with. They are things that should be collected, and they should be perfect, and we should keep them in, you know, the best condition ever. And it's like a very interesting story. But that being said, I don't think that I enjoy this movie as much as one of the other Toy Story movies. Alrighty, and now our runner-up. I absolutely love this movie, and apparently a lot of people don't like this movie as much as I do, but Monsters University, in my opinion, is an incredible movie. I think that the heart-to-heart moment that Sully and Mike have out by the lake whenever they get stuck in the human world is really, really good. I think the fact that this movie does a really good job of kind of creating more of a, like, humble beginning for them, as opposed to, like, in the original movie, we start off, they're successful. He's already at the top of the scare charts. Sully is like the guy. And one thing that I always thought was interesting about Monsters Inc. is Sully is the best of the best, but he's not like cocky. Like in Pixar, the only other character who's like really like the best of the best, you have what's his name? Lightning McQueen, and he is a very cocky person. He's very arrogant and stuff like that. And to me, I always thought that it was interesting that like they're two people who are like the best at what they do. One of them super cocky, and then the other one's super like kind and compassionate and really nice to everybody. And I think that this movie does a really good job of showcasing why Sully is as nice of a person as he is, and why he is as good of a person as he is, and the entire like conflict that he has about like he grew up in a family that is expected to do really good, and he has these expectations for himself that are unrealistic, and he just needs to be the best at all times, and it's really hard for him because for him it just feels like he was born into this and he has to do it. And this movie is kind of a journey for him to figure out who he needs to be, who he is at his heart or whatever. And I also just think that this movie is just an incredibly fun joyride with Uzma Kappa, absolutely fun. The entire scare game sequences are incredible. I love them. They're so good. And just from like start to finish, I think that this movie just oozes with an incredible world, and it just has so much fantastical elements to it, and I just absolutely love this movie to death. But coming in first place, I feel like it's almost impossible to argue this. Toy Story 3 is one of the best conclusions to a trilogy ever. I think that it does an incredible job showcasing the whole story with Andy growing up, and now he's going to college, and the toys kind of having to deal with the preschool kids and all that stuff is very interesting, and I love that. But overall, just the end of Andy's story, and the fact that like the toys would do anything to get back to Andy, and the fact that Andy would do pretty much anything to get his toys back, and the fact that even though he's an adult now and he's going to be going to college, he still cares a lot about his toys. He still has all that sentiment and that nostalgia for them, and he cares about them a lot. And the way that this movie decides to end by him giving all of those toys to another kid so that they can appreciate them and they can have those toys, really nice. I love the way that they decided to end this trilogy. I think that obviously there's a lot of really emotional moments with them in the landfill, yeah, that's the word. When they're in the landfill and they're all like holding hands and they think that they're all going to burn to death and they're going to die. Really great. The callback with the aliens and the claw, absolutely perfect in that sequence as well. And overall, I just think that Lotso is an incredible villain. Everything with Barbie and Ken is such a great show of feminism, and I absolutely love that. I love that that was incredible for a little kids movie to have something that does a great job of empowering women and showcasing how you are your own person and you need to be your own person, and it's going to be great. And I just overall think that Toy Story 3 is one of the best animated movies that Pixar has ever made. And even though, like I said, I'm not a huge fan of the Toy Story franchise, I have to give it its credit where the credit's due. Okay, and as promised, I'm gonna go ahead and give you guys my quick ranking for like if I was just ranking them as movies in general. So in dead last place, I would have had Toy Story 4, then I would have had Finding Dory right after that in the 8th place, and then in number 7 we would have Incredibles 2, because I did really like Incredibles 2. I just think that it is so underwhelming in comparison to the original. Coming in 6th place, we would have Cars 2, because I am a huge defender of Cars 2. I love Cars 2, and I will always really appreciate how bold of a movie it was. Coming in 5th place, we would have had Toy Story 2. Coming in 4th, we would have had Cars 3, because that movie did make me cry cry. It was one of the first movies in my adult life that made me cry. And then we would have Inside Out 2. I really enjoyed it. I definitely think it deserves to be top 3 Pixar sequels because it is just so damn good. Coming in second place, we have Toy Story 3 because once again, it is an incredible movie and it is hard to deny that it is one of Pixar's best movies ever made. But coming in first place for me would be Monsters University. I think that it is one of my favorite prequels I've ever seen, and overall I think that it just does an incredible job with these characters and bringing them together and making them have this incredible emotional through line. I think that Mike's journey in this movie is not talked about enough. He goes through so much, and he basically has lived his entire life thinking, oh my god, I want to be a scare, I want to do this, I want to do that, and realizing he'll never be able to live his dream because of the way he was born. And that sucks. That is depressing. That is really deep, and I feel like we don't talk about it. But that being said, that was it for that, and that was it for this entire video, in fact. I love and appreciate you guys so much for coming by and checking it out. I think that you guys are incredible, and I hope you guys have the best day ever. And if you like this video, feel free to like and subscribe. Like I said, my full ranking of all of the Pixar movies ever is going to be coming out at some point in the next 2 days. But that being said, that's it for this video, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming by and checking it out. I'm gonna head out now. Peace out. Bow. Bow, bow. Back at it again, but that's irrelevant. Flow so smooth, they calling me Mr. Elegant. Like an elephant, I got a long nose. Like a president, I've got a few hoes. Swift with a stutter, I'm smooth like butter. Don't see it coming when I slip undercover. Like a big dog, but I don't bite. I'm still a big broad, I'd win that fight. Come match you and I knock out your lights.